So immigration and Latinoization of the United States are very controversial topics today. While they are closely related, what I want to urge you to think about today is how these processes are interconnected by history, politics, economics, and policy. So let's step back for a moment and consider how our country's immigration policies have developed since the 19th century. As you may recall, though we like to boast that we're an immigrant nation, nothing gets to the core of who we are as a nation than debates on immigration. Who belongs, who doesn't, what characteristics are at the immigrant core of our national identity. These questions have plagued us since the 1862 passage of the Chinese Exclusion Act. And what we can learn from the public battle since then is that the perception of nation, ethnicity, and race are intimately intertwined. Now, many people mistakenly think that all Latinos are new immigrants, and many of them are, but this is not true, entirely true, because Latinos have long been part of what we now call the United States. And they've been incorporated into the country vis-a-vis colonial conquest, vis-a-vis Puerto Rico's Commonwealth, vis-a-vis our interventions throughout Latin America, so those are important to keep in mind. Now, Latinos in the United States, the population trends show that the U.S. is becoming more and more of a Latino nation, and I'll get to show you in a second some of the demographics that matter. But you can see right now, 1 in every 6 individuals in this country is Latino, 1 in every 4 children. So when we think about the future of this country, this is a process that is ongoing and definitely happening. Now, I won't go through all of these, but I'll focus on the trends that are occurring. There used to be that Latinos were focused in certain regions of the country, but there's now a different kind of geographic distribution occurring, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more. But Latinos also integrate culturally, because one of the things that many anti-immigrant promoters say is that we don't want to integrate, and that we don't integrate economically, but the fact is we do. Now, the numbers here show the dramatic rise in 1980 in the percent of Latinos in the country, with 1980 being 14 million and 2010 being 50 million. So it is a dramatic change, and it helps me to understand why some people are beginning to think, what is happening to our country? What does this mean? This slide will give you a sense of what we call the new destinations of Latino immigration, and that is, you'll see the major changes in the South that are going on, and which is no longer can be considered through the lens of a black and white paradigm. And this has caused much tension with having people rethink their notions of race. And the previous census, these counties were very much in the Midwest. So in 2006, many of you might remember that we had many immigration debates. What I did is the following that year, I had a sabbatical, and I traveled around the country for 6 months, bicycling 8,000 miles to talk to people about, I wanted to get beyond the media discourse and media hype and talk to people about how Latinos are fitting into their community. Now, I'm going to read this, the bottom part of this. It comes as the beginning poem of my book, one of my books. Lorenzo, a farm worker in Northern California, tells me as we ride a commuter bus over a treacherous hill of a wife in Michigan and a sister in Tejas, under the same sky but not in each other's sights or arms, because their arms are filled to stand with food for others. Yet even with the scorn, this is a better life than the home when the food was ever absent from the table. Part of me was to try and humanize the debates around immigration so we understand from the perspective of people who were impacted the most. Now again, our mainstream paradigm of immigration often thinks through the lens of the melting pot. Part of what I learned from this trip, and I sort of knew already, was that influence goes both ways, and that Latinos are reshaping U.S. culture. Again, to comprehend the nature of immigration, I wanted to listen to people's stories and understand how their socialization and desire to come to the United States was motivated well before they left their country. That the relationship of dependency with the U.S. is cultivated and sustained in numerous ways over time, but to also remind people, or people reminded me, that the right to food, shelter, and work are fundamental human rights. Now, again, it was really important for me to learn firsthand from people that the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986 really helped contribute to the demographic dispersal of people, because they now had a right to go to the labor market and seek better wages. They also made clear to me that people, through different means of getting to know people, overcame their ignorance and began to understand that maybe we do have something in common, and maybe we do have some mutual, a notion of mutuality that gets to be cultivated. And so in this way, I think that people, through their ignorance was challenged by learning to admire immigrant work ethic, to understand and respect people's family and religious values, and to recognize their their codependency. Clearly there's a certain amount of ambivalence that was there, and there was mixed feelings, but I do think that people began to understand that it was really important that the local attitudes, especially in small rural towns, local leadership made all the difference in the world, because they established a dominant tone and attitudes on how new immigrants are received. And again, whether you're talking about through police, lawyers, teachers, religious leaders, media personalities, small towns can either decide to huddle up and say, we're worried about immigration and we're going to be anti-immigrant town, or we're going to be a sanctuary, or we're going to do things to facilitate better relationships and understanding between people. In the urban areas, I learned that Latino communities face ongoing and new threats to community cohesion through gentrification. This concern for their sense of their ethnic identity and what a sense of place and neighborhood was very important, because there are many people who face these inner city struggles or along the border where there's a lot of battle over prime real estate as they think about new ports of entry opening, about what's going to help sustain the Latino community in the future. Now, it's clear also that efforts to establish and resist local ordinances have intensified the racialization of the entire Latino community. And what I learned is that Latinos are more active than ever in supporting one another, getting involved in their communities, educating themselves and others about their rights, and developing cross-cultural relationships. But therefore, a certain amount of Latino unity has intensified as a result of immigration debates, meaning that ethnic identity has been strengthened rather than weakened, although because they're under attack. Now, I spoke with a young man, a leader of a farm workers organization on the border, the U.S. El Paso border, and he used an analogy that I want to share with you. He said, look, our relationship with immigration debates in this country is really one of like an analogy he gave me around domestic violence. In domestic violence, we know that women suffer violence. They suffer psychological violence, physical violence, and we know that it's actually not because partner wants them to leave. It's because they want them to stay under their control, be manipulable, vulnerable, exploitable. And he made that analogy with our immigration policy, that we don't really want to get rid of immigrants, we just want them vulnerable. So for me, one of the big keys in fostering a better understanding is to have people think about what are notions of mutuality, how our lives are interconnected, because Latino immigrants are here because we were there in their countries in many ways and led to them coming here. Thank you.